Hello, my name is Pierre Fremont, professor of rehabilitation, Laval University in beautiful Quebec City. And the question I'd like to bring to this group today is, can protocols guide the management of presumed concussions? Or if I wanted to rephrase that, I would ask the question, should every concussed kid see a doctor? And I'll come back to that. So I got involved in concussion through my term as past president of CASM last year, and specifically as chair of the Canadian Concussion Collaborative, and also as a medical expert member on the Quebec Task Force on Concussion. And these recent experiences raise questions about concussion management as a public health problem upstream of the healthcare system. And that's the perspective I want to bring to this group today. So what's the Canadian Concussion Collaborative? It's a collaborative group, as the name indicates, of not only medical groups that you can see on this slide, but also Parachute Canada, the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sports, and it's multidisciplinary with the involvement of the athletic therapists, the psychologists, the physiotherapists, and the chiropractors of Canada. So it's really a multidisciplinary group of organization concerned with concussions. And this group formally endorsed a set of 2 recommendations that we recently published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Why did we do that? It's because the past 2 international consensus wishfully stated that all athletes, regardless of the level of participation, should be managed using the same treatment and return to play paradigm. Although this might be possible in elite and pro sport, meeting that challenge at earlier levels of participation remains a challenge. So the 2 recommendations are as follows. The first one says that every organization responsible for events with a risk of concussion should be required to implement concussion management protocols that are customized for their context and available resources, which will vary from level to level, obviously. Second one is that in situations where timely and sufficient availability of medical resources qualified for concussion management is not available, which is most of sport practice in Canada, multidisciplinary collaborative approaches should be used to improve concussion management outcomes while facilitating access to medical resources where appropriate. And the goal of those 2 recommendations was to support subsequent lobbying and implementation efforts that we are currently leading. So what's working? Well, organizations at every level, sport, government, education, are very receptive and looking for evidence-based guidance and innovative solutions. So people are very receptive. One good experience that it's currently going on is the Ontario Education Ministry Policy Memorandum number 158 that mandated concussion management protocols implementation in high school by January of this year. So we'll get some interesting information from Ontario this experience. Also, the Quebec Ministry of Education, Leisure and Sport just received recommendation from its concussion task force. So we'll see hopefully very shortly what the Quebec Minister of Education and Sports will do with those recommendations. Also working well is the natural evolution of concussion, which is good in most cases. So we know that studies show that properly prepared environments can increase the identification of concussion by a factor of 3 to 5, and that's only education-based. And the majority of concussions, and the figure of 80 to 90% is often quoted, will evolve favorably within 7 to 10 days. So the question is, can this information constitute the basis of innovative approaches to the initial management of concussions? What's not working so well at this point? So in this recent survey, we learned that 49% of family physician, 52% of emergency department physician, and 27% of pediatricians report no knowledge of any consensus statement. So what we know is that concussion expertise remains a question of personal professional development and experience at this point. The good news, however, is that it's very likely improving every year, since most medical organizations have a regular concussion session in their professional development activities. So hopefully that's improving. Also not working so well is that sometimes restrictive criteria are used to define concussion, both in clinical settings and research. So in this example of a current trauma form used in Quebec, the diagnosis of concussion requires confusion, disorientation, loss of consciousness, or neurological signs. So if you only have a headache with nausea following a hit during a sports game, you're not screened as having a concussion, and you may not be eligible for a research project or to clinical research to treat your problem. So that's a problem that we need to address. So how can solutions designed with elite and professional sports in mind be adapted to little league sports at the level of mass participation? I think we need to think out of the box. Eric Gay cannot be managed in terms of concussion the same way we manage concussion at Little Ski Club Mont-Saint-Anne near Quebec City. We need to adapt the way we deal with concussion. Specifically, the question I hope can be addressed are the following. What's the best scenario for initial concussion management at the earliest level of mass participation? Is there a sustainable scientific rationale for the current recommendation that every concussed kid, even those with mild and rapidly resolving symptoms of a presumed concussion, be systematically evaluated by a doctor? In other words, are there criteria that could define some early clinical presentations of a concussion that could be better managed with structured protocols and education rather than with systematic medical evaluation? So I hope this question will result in interesting discussion today and later in June. Thank you very much for your attention.